Good evening and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for this installment of AP US History, where we're not just learning history, we're making history. Okay, we're going to talk to you today about railroads, all right, and labor union strikes. Okay, um, and as we study the strikes, there are basically four biggies to know, and our textbook doesn't go into great detail on them, and they're kind of patched around into different areas. All right, there is the Great Strike of 1877. All right. You might need to look some of these up on the internet or find them in your AP review books or things like that. Great Strike of 1877, that's the same year Reconstruction ends, so putting it in historical context, basically occurs along the B&O Railroad. You might remember that from your Monopoly playing days. And basically all the railroad workers along the rail line go on strike, and the federal government sends the troops in to squash the strikes and force these guys back to work, but it causes a huge blip in the economy. So, one of the great ironies of history, the federal government who agreed to pull the troops out of the South is using troops to enforce help management on a labor strike. Okay, then we have the Haymarket riot, which really isn't a strike; it just happened to occur during a strike, and that's in 1886, and that actually happens in Chicago. So the local history is actually a Haymarket brewery down on the site where the riot happened. It's a very good restaurant. Okay, and this was dealt with the McCormick Reaper Works. You might recognize the name McCormick from your Chicago history, McCormick Place. There's a general strike on May 1st, which was May Day, which is kind of the Labor Day of Europe, and a lot of the workers had called for strikes, and some of these leaders were anarchists and things, and a bomb goes off in Haymarket riot, killing in Haymarket, killing 8 police officers. This is right around Halsted Street in modern-day Chicago. Okay, the one you're going to watch a video on Friday, all right, is the Homestead Strike of 1892. And that is involving Carnegie, so I don't really need to talk much about that one. But the one I want to go into detail on here is the Pullman Strike of 1894. All right, and again, this occurs in Chicago. Okay, Pullman is no longer its own city. It used to be its own city, but it's right down on the south side of Chicago around 115th Street. Okay, so a nice field trip opportunity if you're really looking for something to do. All right, basically George Pullman was one of these philanthropists. He was a wealthy industrialist like Carnegie and like Rockefeller, and decided he wanted to make luxury train cars. Okay, you can kind of see it here, a little bit of the image, all right, where you have these nice luxury sofas so people could travel in style. You'd have a bunk bed on the top, okay, with a sleeper, and then this would fold into a bed on the bottom right here, so you could basically sleep and feel like you're in a luxurious home as you're traveling. Okay. Now, why is there a market for this? Because while we saw with Frederick Jackson Turner's frontier thesis, the class distinctions are breaking down in the West. They're becoming even worse in the East, in the Midwest. Okay, so you would want to ride in one of these if you had money, so you didn't have to ride coach with people like this. Okay, here you're going to be just sitting in a regular seat, just like you would on a metro train with everybody else. And this is when people are smoking cigars, chewing tobacco, okay, and drinking. So just a lot of loud obnoxiousness. And you wouldn't want to travel with your family or even your wife in that kind of setting. Okay, so that's why we had why there was a need for these Pullman sleeping cars to kind of exaggerate the class styles. All right, so Pullman decided he wanted to have his own town, so he was going to provide a place for his workers to live, okay, and work in his factory. And the town was called Pullman. Okay, it's a state historic site now. They're actually trying to make it a national park, so there can be more funding for that, but hasn't really gone anywhere. All right, so he would own the town. He provided your housing, your markets, your libraries, churches, entertainment, everything you needed was in this town. Okay, employees were required to live there. If you worked for Pullman, you had to live in his town. Okay, and he allowed no alcohol in the town other than the town hotel. You can probably guess why. Who's coming to the hotel? His wealthy friends, his investors, his businessmen. Okay, we want to be able to entertain them, but we do not want our workers being exposed to alcohol that way. Okay, so might seem like a nice setup, but you pretty much were living under his rules all across the board. Okay, one of his workers said that we're born in a Pullman house, fed from the Pullman shops, taught in the Pullman school, catechized in the Pullman church, and when we die, we shall go to the Pullman hell. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what these workers thought of living here with Mr. Pullman. But he built this for his workers. He really did genuinely care about them. Okay, now why is that? because this is a popular book that was written during the time period called If Christ Came to Chicago. Okay? And this just illustrates a little bit of what Chicago was like and why you would not want your workers living there. Okay? This guy decided he was going to expose how horrible Chicago was. So in this book, he published where all of the brothels were. Hopefully you know what those are. I can't really say that on the air, what the brothel is. Where the saloons were, the drinking establishments, because these weren't like, there weren't big bright signs out that said, hey, come here and gamble. These were kind of backroom things that would happen in laundromats and in back of drugstores and stuff like that. So this author was trying to expose all that stuff and kind of call these people out. Well, it ended up being the best-selling book in Chicago that year, not because people wanted to see how horrible Chicago was, but because they wanted to know where the brothels, the saloons, and the casinos were. Okay, so Pullman wanted to keep his people away from that. Well, in 1893, a big depression hits. All right, and again, historical context. All right, also in 1893 is the World's Fair in Chicago called the Columbian Exposition. All right, if you've been to the Museum of Science and Industry, that's pretty much where this was going on. Okay, so Chicago was thriving during this and bringing all this investors and all this money into the city. The first Ferris wheel was ever displayed there. If you're looking for a book to read for your historian talk, The Devil in the White City is an excellent book all about this time period. You'll learn so much for the AP exam. Okay, plus it's a little bit of a murder mystery too. All right. So in the Depression of 1893, the poor economy forced Pullman to lay off his workers. All right. He wasn't making enough money. People weren't traveling on these rail cars anymore. He wasn't making new ones. So he decided that he was going to lay off his workers, but make the ones that stuck around work 16-hour days. All right. But cut their wages. Okay. So I'm going to have less workers, but they're going to make them work more often and not pay them as much. Okay. Now it's a depression. Economy's bad. That would be okay if you're a worker because you still have your job, if everything that you had to pay Pullman was cut. However, Pullman maintained the rent in all of his stores and his houses, and the prices all maintained the same. So you basically got a 25% wage cut, okay, working for Mr. Pullman. But you had to continue to pay the same fees to him. Now, you couldn't move, you couldn't decide not to live there or not shop in his stores, so you were kind of in big trouble with that one. All right, so the workers decided to go on strike in 1894. Now, this strike was led by a group called the American Railway Union, all right, headed by a guy named Eugene Debs. So these are all of the railroad workers were going to sympathize with Pullman's workers. All right, so they decided to go on strike and not make his Pullman cars anymore to try and make their point and try and get some money back from him. And the American Railway Union, to sympathize with those workers, decided that any Pullman car, all right, anything that had his that was made by him would not be moved in the train yards. So a train would pull into, say, St. Louis, and the American Railway Union would not move any of Pullman's cars. They would just sit in the rail yard and do nothing. Okay, well, that's going to start to slow down the economy and start to affect business. All right, now hopefully by now you've read the Sherman Antitrust Act, which we know was designed to stop monopolies, but the Sherman Antitrust Act says you can't conspire to restrain trade. Well, is Mr. Debs conspiring to restrain trade? Kind of. And to make matters worse, the federal government decided they were going to put the mail on the Pullman cars. All right, and as you hopefully learned as a kid, when you go to your neighbor's mailbox, if you interfere with the mail, that is a federal crime. So when you're not moving a Pullman car, you're now interfering with the mail for the United States. Not very good crime. So Mr. Debs, okay, is arrested during the strike. As you saw in the last scene, the troops came in. The troops actually came from Fort Sheridan, right down the road from us, and were brought in to stop the strike. There was some violence. Some people were killed. Mr. Debs is arrested and put on trial for leading the strike, violating the Sherman Antitrust Act, and interfering with the U.S. mail. Okay, so he is going to be arrested and sent to jail for 2 years in beautiful Woodstock, Illinois. Okay, and he actually successfully runs for president from jail in 1912 and actually gets 1 million votes. Okay, so he's been in jail a couple times for kind of leading some of these strikes and things. He would be what we would call a socialist. All right, which is somebody that believes in government ownership of the big businesses and big companies. Because if the government owns these things, the government is going to pay you fair wages because they're not trying to make a profit. Where Pullman is going to do everything in his power to try and make money at his workers' expense. All right. So that concludes this lesson on the Pullman Strike, all right, from the Kuhn Academy. Remember, we're not just learning history, we're making history. All right, have a wonderful Friday, and we'll talk to you after break. Thanks.